Hello and welcome. I'm Tafarra Gadamo. My guest today, Dr. Yates, developed a simple way of teaching mathematics. He calls it graspmatics. He was here 4 years ago talking about it, but have things changed since? Welcome to the program, Dr. Yates.
Thank you so much. And as my Ethiopian wife, Betelhem Ayele, from Gondar, or of Gondar, would say, Yuhulachin Destino. It's our pleasure.
Thank you. You came 4 years ago trying to explore the country and to spread basically the word about what you keep on telling us is easy African way of teaching mathematics, graspmatics. But you ended up getting married to an Ethiopian. That was quite unintended, was it?
No, it wasn't, but I like the expression in Ethiopia. It says, Xavier Fiker now. The Creator is love. And when you come to a land of love, you got to be part of love. So by coming to Ethiopia and getting the opportunity of amalgamating, socializing with people in this country, it has given me the opportunity to invest in one of the beautiful daughters of Ethiopia. Wasn't intended, but my grandmother would always say this. She says, if you want to make the Creator laugh, tell him your plans.
Tell him what?
Your plans.
Your plans?
Yes.
Oh, did you?
I did. And he looked at me and laughed. He said, You're not marrying somebody of the Caribbean. You're not marrying somebody of Guyana, which is the country I was told by my parents that I was born. And Guyana is the only English-speaking country in the continent, South America, Latin America. So that would have been my first choice, to marry somebody of Guyana or of the Caribbean or United States or England, because those are the countries I've traveled. But that's when you tell Xavier your plan, Xavier looks at you and laughs and says, funny, very funny guy. I got better things.
Are your thoughts as nomadic as your character per se is? You keep on traveling from one country to the other. How settled are you in terms of putting the word across as far as graspmatics is concerned? Well, graspmatics is about making everything easy and making it African.
Simplifying, yes. If you look at the word, the etymology of the word grasp, G-R-A-S-P, we must pop our P. It's a sounding off word. Grasp and then matics, two words put together. And grasp, according to Noah Webster, the English dictionist, he says the word means to grab a hold with the mind, mental learning. And matics come from the word ma'at, which is a Nubian word out of Kemet, they call Egypt, which means spiritual development or learning. So when you put the two together, it is not only about learning mentally in the mind, but also learning in the heart spiritually. And you talk about settling. That is the reason why I cannot say I can settle in one place, because the world is my home. Not just Guyana or the Caribbean or United States of America or England or even here, Habesha. But it's as many countries that the Creator will allow me to travel to and to be part of the spiritual revolution of the minds of people when it comes to learning math and many other topics they call subjects.
So tell me a little bit about graspmatics, because I want to recap the conversation 4 years ago. Tell me in 1 minute what graspmatics is.
Okay, I'll try. Graspmatics means to overcome the apprehension, intimidation, or the fear of learning mathematics.
But there is nothing mathematical here.
Well, there is. Right now, for example, when we had the interview 4 years ago, the point I was getting across to you, and I think you grasp it, was that math is best taught as a kwankwa, a language. And once you get across as a language, then we can versate it. In other words, before there was writing, there was verbal way of speaking. We all did that. As children, we learned to speak first before we learned to read and write, isn't it? Right, it's natural. So once you teach it that way, as in talking to the child, and explain it to the child verbally, and you're able to now articulate it, then it would be much more simpler than just learning it based on rote and memorization or resuscitation, they call it, right?
I remember mentioning this, raising this question 4 years ago, but mathematics is basically about figures.
Yeah, that's what they tell us, but it's much more to it than that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was taught that too. I was forced taught by the British because I grew up in a British colony, born in the what they call 50s, and Guyana became independent in 1966, so I was exposed to the British way of learning. Then when Guyana became independent, they started investing in the American educational system. So I had experience of being educated by the British and by the Americans. And you're right, that's what they tell it. It's just about figures. No, it's more to it than that. For example, as my wife would say, "Le me sale."
For example.
For example, right? Math, numbers, figures, are not just inscriptional symbols. Figures, what we call numbers, they have personality and character. And that is what I'm bringing forward to people who are struggling with learning math.
But are you not making life difficult for them in terms of learning?
No, actually,
Personalities, as you would call.
Actually, no, and here's the reason why. When people look at math as, first of all, as a language, we all have to speak. We all have to communicate somehow. Fortunately for some of us, we speak more than one, as you say, languages, right? So think about it. The man who speaks 6 languages and the man who speaks 1, who is much more articulative and able to communicate with more people? Right. So the math now is taught as a language and just memorization and figures. Then the person who's learning it was able to express him or herself much better than just being learning it in one. I mentioned about personality and character of numbers, okay? For example, when we learn about personality and character, personality has to do with gender, male or female. Character has to do with attitude and behavior, how one is being taught in society to, as they say, to conduct oneself. But that's the same thing with numbers. For example, the number 0 that unfortunately, and I emphasize, unfortunately, I was taught by the British and by the Americans that it means nothing. That is killing the character and the personality of the number. Because there's no such thing as nothing, because there's always something. If I get pen and paper and I made 0, I've made something, you can't call it nothing. Because I've never seen nothing. I've never experienced nothing. So the starting number is 0. The personality of that number is neutral because it is used in both odd and even. But the character of it now is beginning, balance, equilibrium. So when you start learning the math in that text and not context, but in that text, it gets across to people saying, interesting. It makes sense that it is of something, or else it wouldn't be in the number we call 10 and 20 and 30, they call 30 and 40, etc. So when we approach the math in that aspect, in 3 aspects: 1, language; 2, personality and character; and 3, spirituality.
Okay, we'll come back to that. But have you succeeded in convincing people that 0 is nothing anymore?
Nothing anymore. Not convincing, but enlightening. Right. Enlightening means to come to awareness. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm here to share that which I have learned and studied and able to pass on to them so it can help them overcome their apprehension, their intimidation, their fear of learning math in a what? Perceptional manner.
So have you succeeded in doing that? Because at the end of the day, you're convincing people to adopt your way of thinking, your line of thinking, and take it as their own.
I think the answer to your question is yes. But you're using the term convince. But I'm not into convince, I'm into enlightening, meaning to add to what they already have, right? In other words, if you have an apple and that's all you know, an apple, I'll bring you a banana, and I'll bring you a mango. So you have fruits now, more than what you have. That's what I'm doing, right? And people are ecstatically glad and enthusiastically happy to say, you know what? This makes sense. Because you're talking about a starting point to get to 1, to get to 2. So it is enhancing their learning capability. And hopefully, through this network, we're able to show people the illustration of the math and the people in my forums, in my classrooms, expressing themselves in the mathematics.
We are on the move, and we have very little time to kind of conceptualize your kind of the things that you have come up with in terms of teaching mathematics. There is nothing spiritual, or there is less. The world is less spiritual today than it was several hundred years ago. So that makes your intervention a lot more difficult.
Challenging is the word, not difficult. Challenging is the word, not difficult.
You don't like it?
No. Because exactly.